Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. It's not Santoki alongside me. That's the first thing you're all going to notice. You're going to be like, what's going on? What's Machel cooking on this particular episode? Yes, I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Machel's name, Patrick Hewitt. Santoki will be back soon. He's still flying here, there, and everywhere. But I'm delighted to have with me on today's episode Behram Qazi. Behram is everywhere. I shouldn't even need to do an introduction. Whether you see, do you know what, Behram? You're on so many different things. I can't call all of them.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. But I'm absolutely chuffed to be on Caribbean Cricket Podcast. It is my debut over here, and I've been following your work for a long time. So, happy that the day is finally here that I come and get to talk about cricket on your show.
100%. And first things first, before we kind of chop up the episode and get into what we want to get into, seriously, people, every single person here after this episode is done, or even as you're watching this, please just, all you have to do is type Behram's name into Google, and you'll find all the different kind of media outlets he's part of. Behram is highly knowledgeable on cricket. We're going to talk PSL, but don't by all means pigeonhole Behram to be someone who can only talk about PSL. He just happens to be coming on to talk about PSL, but you can find Behram on so many of the platforms with Jared Kimber. Jared, of course, needs no introduction as well. For those of you who are joining us from any kind of Pakistani-related cricket channels, I'm sure you already follow Behram as it is anyways. Grassroots cricket as well. So people, I'll put all the information at the bottom below. Please go and support Behram because you won't regret it. But Behram, thank you for giving up your time. I only ran this one by you just slightly over 24 hours ago. I'd written down in my, believe it or not, I've started a content calendar. So about a few weeks ago, I'd written down, should talk about PSL. And to be fair, Behram, it happened after the Shamar Joseph deal was announced. And I was like, we probably should do something on PSL, because without that performance at the Gabba, Shamar probably doesn't get that deal in PSL. And without him getting that deal in PSL, he may not have got the deal in IPL. And more importantly, people would not be saying, should he start for West Indies in the upcoming T20 World Cup? So it just felt like, in the context of a World Cup starting in 4 months' time, that PSL certainly needs a lot more Caribbean eyes on it. A lot of our players are going to be involved in PSL this year. The conditions in the PSL, whilst not mimicking what will happen in the Caribbean, are closer to what Caribbean or West Indian cricket fans might expect in terms of a like for like, to see how our players may or may not get on in conditions, etc. But before we break it all down, I just wanted to kind of just get a quick synopsis from you first, though, Behram, in terms of where do you see PSL now? And the reason why I ask you this is, if I go back and look at old Caribbean Cricket Podcast episodes from about 3 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago, we always said that CPL was a better league than PSL. I don't believe that anymore. I certainly think that in the kind of hierarchy of T20 leagues, PSL is now above CPL. But where do you place PSL in terms of its journey and its kind of standing in the kind of bloated T20 league market?
It's interesting you mentioned the CPL, right? Because before the PSL, that's what I thought as well. I was like, definitely second best league is CPL. And I think in terms of attracting top talent, because of the window of the CPL, it does actually attract better talent than the PSL as things stand. I feel that way. But the PSL as a brand on its own, I feel like, the IPL is obviously not just the biggest T20 league in cricket, it is one of the biggest leagues in sport, right? If you, especially if you look at the revenues and the economic benefits that it brings with it, it's a cash rich mega money sort of league, and that's its brand, right? When you go to the IPL, you're looking at, oh, let's look at the auction, who went for how much has every team spent, and that's kind of what it's centered around, money. The PSL, I believe, was centered around initially bringing cricket back to Pakistan, and was the greater cause. And I think everyone really bought into it. If you look at Darren Sammy coming to Pakistan in those early days and the way he talks about all of it, you really feel that they were also invested in the greater cause. You think of Shane Watson, JP Duminy came early on. There were some huge names who were a part of the PSL in the first few seasons, and then they also used to make the trip to Pakistan, and that was absolutely imperative with respect to kick-starting cricket back in the nation. And I think now it's even transformed from that, because it's been a while since cricket has been back in Pakistan, and teams are fairly comfortable now touring Pakistan. I think pretty much every major team has, actually. I don't think anyone's left. So I don't think that's what the PSL is doing anymore. It's not there to bring cricket back to Pakistan. Now it's a sort of a celebration of cricket within Pakistan. But how I see it is that since it's not the IPL, and we can argue whether or not it's the second best T20 franchise league or not, I think it's bagged some really solid TV rights this time, which definitely strengthen its case. But what I feel the PSL now is it's a breeding ground for international cricketers from abroad to come and kind of solidify and cement their place in a PSL team, and then they can go and represent their nation. For Pakistan, obviously, it's going to be like one of the biggest cash cows, and also a talent hunt program of sorts. Because if you perform in the PSL as a Pakistan youngster, or even someone who's seasoned and has a good PSL season, you're automatically, in the conversation of, T20 international reckoning to play for Pakistan or not. It's a way you can sort of expedite, or jumpstart your career, where you can probably have one or two good PSL seasons, and it would fare better than, let's say, 3 first-class seasons or something like that, because you're really catching everyone's eye, and the whole world is, well, not the whole world, but a lot of the world is watching. I feel the PSL is now a league which is highly competitive, because you get to play some of the best bowling in the world. That's what everyone comes and says. And it's a league which allows these foreign cricketers to come and kind of, test their mettle. And if they succeed in the PSL, they do what many times get picked. Look at Harry Brook, right? He's an example. Tim David is an example. David Malan is an example. I might be forgetting someone. Phil Salt, potentially. All of these guys went on to play for their nations, right? So that's how I see the PSL now. And I think that, in terms of quality of cricket, it's right up there as well. Like, obviously, it's not IPL level, because you don't have that star power in terms of the players that it attracts. But I feel like it's still very, very competitive. And also, it's something that Pakistan, one of the few things that Pakistan has done right in terms of branding it and the fields. And, they always create a lot of hype around it. So, yeah, I mean, I would say if not second, then definitely the next best after that. It's got to be third. But yeah, I mean, second or third sounds about right.
Excellent. And the reason why, like I say, we have such a PSL focus on this channel, and will be, whether on our Twitter handles, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, casting a keen eye on this year's competition is, and to be fair, I'm sure it's the same for Pakistanis themselves, right? And maybe some of the other nations. We're 4 months, like I say, out from the World Cup, and every T20 league now matters, because I don't know Pakistan's upcoming international commitments, but West Indies, we have 3 T20 games left before the World Cup starts, and thereafter the World Cup squad is selected. So every league now has a level of importance. More so, it's one of those rare moments where you can be like, actually the league is more important than international cricket in telling you where the players are actually at, right? It's like I say, PSL and IPL. So what I've done, Behram, is I've looked through the different squads in PSL, And I'm not going to look at Karachi Kings because Pollard is there, but obviously Pollard is retired, so we won't go down. We won't look at them. So if there are any Pakistani fans saying, "Why did you not mention Karachi Kings?" I'm sorry. There was no frame of there's no frame of reference for us from a West Indian perspective. But Behram, I'm going to start with. I'll bring him up on the screen. I'm going to start with Islamabad United, who have Obed McCoy and Matthew Ford. Now, neither one of these two players are currently in. They weren't in the T20 squad that went to Australia. Matthew Ford was in the squad that played at home versus England at Christmas. West Indies have a bowling issue. Again, without knowing who's listening to this episode, against both England and certainly against Australia, 4 out of the 8 innings against those two, and these are weakened Australian and England sides, both the Aussies and the English regularly put up significant scores over 200. So West Indian fans understand that our current strategy of going in with 5 bowlers is only as strong as the 5 bowlers that you've got. And within that current strategy, some of them are bowling all-rounders. They're not even out-and-out bowlers. Now, these two, Obed McCoy, Matthew Ford, are out-and-out bowlers, or granted, Matthew Ford can biff it a bit. Obed McCoy is the only bowler in the Caribbean who probably offers us left-arm variety and has a chance of making his way into the World Cup squad. Matthew Ford is good up front, can induck it, has very good control in terms of swing bowling. But what I want to ask you for each of the teams that we go through, what I just want to know for each player is, do you see them as a starter for their particular franchise? And what role do you see them potentially playing for that particular franchise? Because again, West Indian fans need to understand that yes, players can play in a franchise tournament, doesn't necessarily mean they're playing per se. So let's start with Obed and Matthew, Behram.
Yeah, so Islamabad United, this is not going to encourage a lot of West Indian fans, but they tend to always have a stacked batting order with foreign talent. That's how they've kind of played their cricket in the PSL. And they've got those guys this time around as well. Like you can expect Alex Hales and Colin Munro to start every game, right? And then Jordan Cox is also someone I feel like they might, lean towards playing. That leaves one spot for another foreign player. And I feel like Tamal Mills, who's also in this squad, might get the nod ahead of Obed or Matthew Ford. But here's another thing that I'm thinking is that in the middle order, Islamabad do have the likes of Azam Khan. They just got Imad Wasim. They have Fahim Ashraf. This is the lower to middle order. And Shadab Khan also bats there, right? So maybe there is no room for Jordan Cox, right? And in that scenario, I see Obed McCoy make it to the team ahead of Matthew Ford because of that left arm angle. It gives them something else. And in the bowling, you've already got like Naseem Shah, right? In the pace department. But apart from him, it's not like they're stacked in the pace department, right? One of Tamal Mills, Tamal Mills was probably definitely going to be playing. So there is room for one more bowler over here, unless they want to continue to stack all-rounders. So in that scenario, I see Obed McCoy playing. But if I had to bet my money on it, then I would say that he wouldn't be an out-and-out starter in the PSL. Like he probably wouldn't play the first game. I see a window over there, though, opening up for him at some point where he can come and impress. But I wish I could see Matthew Ford more, right? He's not like particularly pacey. He's slow, but I mean, we all saw that England series. Sure, the T20 is not the reference point over here. The ODIs are and how good he was. And that's what gets me excited, right? To see a young player, 21 years of age, do well in the international arena and now has an opportunity to impress in franchise cricket. So I would love it if they can take a punt on him in a few games and see, like, let's see what this kid is all about, right? It's an unforgiving place at times for Pacers, the PSL, because, of late, you've had these boundaries brought in. And Rawalpindi is a surface where no pacer or any sort of bowler ever wants to play because it's an absolute road, right? It's developed that reputation recently. But I think there's still good picks. And Obed wasn't originally picked by Islamabad. He's a replacement draft pick. So if they thought that they needed one more kind of bowler, right? That, hey, we're lacking this one thing. We've had time to think about it. Let's go for Obed McCoy. So that's why I feel like there's a decent chance that he can slot into the first team. but I don't see that happening off the bat.
That's really interesting. And this is exactly why I got you on the show, Behram, because like you say, there will be West Indian fans assuming that, okay, a strong performance in PSL may push someone into consideration. But if Matthew Ford goes through PSL and only plays 1 or 2 games, you're asking a lot then to suddenly pick him in a West Indies World Cup squad when he's not. You dropped him for Australia. So unless Islamabad were like, he plays 1 game and then they're like, wow, we can't drop him, it's unlikely he's going to get the game time, you're saying, to really show what he can and can't do.
Yeah. But like, who's to say? Maybe they are feeling a bit, maybe they see something in the nets and they're like, okay, no, maybe we have to start this guy. Who knows? But I just feel like they're going to start with those 3 foreign batters because they always do that. When I look at that squad, you can totally afford to play Tamal and one of those guys, Obed or Matthew Ford. So let's see. That depends on Azhar Mahmood and Mike Hessen and the think tank.
Thank you very much. Moving on, let's go to Lahore Qalandars. I always wonder if I say that right. Is it Qalandars or not?
It is. You actually nailed the pronunciation over there.
So they just have Shai Hope. Now, Shai Hope, there's a lot of debate right now across West Indies media as to if Shai Hope is a guarantee in our T20 side. His white ball game has kicked on tremendously so. Was one of the standout players in last year's CPL. He no longer is an ODI batter who goes at a strike rate of 80. He very much can bat 100 plus, seems to have a far greater range of shots. But within the context of the West Indies team, we know that our 5-bowler strategy is a very questionable strategy, which means one batter is possibly at risk of being dropped. At the moment, some say it might be Hope. Some, however, see Hope as like the glue guy in our T20 side in terms of being able to consolidate, play spin, then accelerate. Do you see Shai Hope as a starter for Lahore? And interestingly, if you do see him as a starter, what position do you see him batting at?
I see Shai Hope as an absolute lock in this Lahore team. I've also spoken to Sameen Rana, the COO of Lahore Qalandars, so I kind of have some more insider information on this. If this was a stock market, then I had overstepped my boundaries. But Shai Hope actually featured for Lahore for a few games last season as well. I had the pleasure of talking to him, not talking, but I was in a press conference where I asked a question, and I asked the obvious question. I was like, Shai, everyone looks at you as someone who isn't a T20 batter because of the strike rate issue. I'm paraphrasing right now, but that's basically what I said. So I was like, how important is this? And are you transforming your game or something along the lines? And it seemed like he was, right? His answer was that, look, you always have to play to the situation and you play to your role. And the role that Shai Hope will be given over here is going to be in the middle order. And I'm positive that he's going to be keeping wicket because Sam Billings is unavailable for Lahore this time. So that's huge, right? I see Shai starting every game, keeping in every game, and someone who even like the likes of Shaheen will go up to time and again and, pick his brain. I do see that because Shai Hope has international captaincy experience as well. And he's the sort of guy who's never in the periphery. Like Shai Hope is part of the conversation, right? In any team that he's in, he kind of likes to talk to different people and he has that kind of personality. Plus, he's your wicketkeeper, right? So the only thing I'll be concerned with is that I see Lahore Qalandars and I see a lot of top order bats, right? And how do you fit all of those top order bats in a team and then have Shai Hope, Sikandar Raza Butt, and David Wisa? Because those 3 guys are going to be playing, right? Wisa is literally a cult hero in Lahore, the amount of performances he has. And Rashid is unavailable, so Sikandar also plays every game because they don't really have another spinner, right? So with Shai Hope alongside those guys, how will they kind of fit in so many top order players? Because Rasi is in this team as well. Rasi's only available for 6 games, but he's around. Bhanaka Rajapaksha is around, another guy who will slot in the middle order. So it'll be interesting to see like what the entry point of Shai Hope is. I would like them to maybe just send him, if possible, in the first half of a T20 batting innings. I would not be too comfortable sending, even though he's transformed his game, don't get me wrong. I think Shai Hope is a great story, and I'm really keen and excited to see where he takes his career from here. But I'm not going to be like particularly at ease if I have in my team Shai Hope coming out to bat in, let's say, the last 6 overs, right? So Lahore might get that wrong. I feel that they need to figure that out. But I do see him starting in every single game. He's going to have somewhat of a leadership position. The Kalandars family is very well knit. They give everyone a lot of space to express each other. David Visa, someone who's been around for so long, he's part of the fabric of the Lahore Kalandars at this point, right? And Sikandar Raza Butt also just fit in like a glove last season. This is a really strong team. When Rashid Khan is available, this is arguably the best T20 attack in the world, right? So for Shea Hope, if he performs here, I feel like that's not going to be a debate anymore. He is going to be starting for the West Indies because he's going to get a role where I don't think he's going to perform or get to bat in the first 10 overs too frequently. I feel like that's the case because they've got a lot of those guys. So if he can do a job over here, I think the West Indies will have no qualms in starting him for the World Cup either.
Interesting stuff, Behram. I love this. Moving on. This is an interesting one. Multan Sultans, Johnson Charles. Now, Johnson Charles has previous PSL experience. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like, correct me if I had this wrong, Johnson's played in different positions in PSL. There's Johnson, the opener. There's Johnson, the middle order bat. Now, obviously, for the West Indies, Johnson Charles is used as a biffer at the top of the order. Brandon King's the more stylistic one, who might go at 50 off 30. 35 maybe, whereas Johnson Charles seems to almost be given like a Ben Duckett remit, where it's like go out there and just swipe. Yeah. And because we know that if you're in after 20 balls, you've probably swiped at least 47 runs or something like that. And if you're out, you're out. That's almost his role for West Indies. But not everybody is enamored with Johnson Charles in the West Indies team. There is an argument that we're not blessed with opening options, but I look at it and I go, well, Sultans look at Johnson Charles and like, well, we want to take a punt on him. So there must be something there. But when I looked at the Sultans overseas picks, Behram, I'm not convinced he necessarily plays, right? Because they've got David Willey, David Malan, Chris Jordan, Ollie Stone, Reza Hendricks, and then Johnson Charles. Now, obviously, some players might not be playing the whole of PSL and all of that, but I'm not sure if Johnson is necessarily. Does he get into that side?
It's
just before we think about the Pakistani players as well, obviously.
So one thing I can tell you is that the owner of the Multan Sultans, Ali Tareen, is a big fan of Johnson Charles, and Johnson Charles has featured for this franchise before, so it's not like he hasn't played in the PSL prior, and he's also played for the Multan Sultans. So him fitting in the dressing room and everything would not be an issue. I do see him as a backup over here, though, because I have confirmation that the top three that they're looking at is Rizwan, Reza Hendricks, and David Malan. But hey, those guys play a similar mold of T20 cricket. They don't just start hitting from ball one, and they kind of take their time before they tend to go berserk. Like you mentioned, Johnson Charles doesn't do that, and he has developed a game in which he kind of attacks the ball from the word go. So, I mean, will he start? Probably not, right? Because you've got David Malan, Reza Hendricks, David Willey. These guys are short starters, right? I feel like they might go towards Chris Jordan as well because they've lost Reece Topley. If they had Reece Topley, then Reece Topley was going to start as well. But because they've lost him, I feel like they'll trust another overseas bowler because they also don't have Ehsanullah. I'm not sure how much of the PSL you follow, but this was this really tear-away quick that Multan unearthed last season, and he took the PSL by storm. He's not around this time, right? So they're going to want to put in some more experience in the bowling attack, and that's why I feel like Chris Jordan might make it to the team. But, I can see a world in which they realize that, or if that happens, maybe I'm completely wrong, and Rizwan, Reza, and David Malan set the PSL on fire. That could also happen. But based on my cricketing acumen, I feel like you need someone up there who can really give it a go. And you need to maximize the power play, right? Johnson Charles is that guy. He just showed it to us in the Australia series. Him and Brandon King did quite well up top, I feel. They formed a pretty formidable opening partnership. So I would like to see him feature because I think Multan will need his services based on their skill sets. Because, look, they've lost Riley Rousseau as well. This is a team which used to or has done really, really well in the PSL for the last 3-4 seasons. And that's because of their, really strong top order. This is going to be a new top order. let's say 5 games down the line, David Milan is just not performing, or Riza just cannot get bat on ball. That's a possibility, right? You'd probably bet your money that Rizwan will perform because he's playing at home and he's been a great run accumulator. Him and Babar, that's what they do. Run accumulation is their thing. And in T20 cricket, if you look at averages, they're right up there, right? Even though we can have a completely different podcast and talk about whether or not that's the right approach or not. But if there is an issue with respect to top order firepower, I think Johnson Charles is a shoo-in. He doesn't have to prove anything in this team. They already trust him. They know what he can do, and they love him. I know that for a fact that Johnson Charles is really liked by the ownership. So he's in actually a pretty decent position over here to maybe end the PSL on a consistently playing note. And if David Milan or one of these guys, they leave mid-tournament, because that's always a thing, right? That's always a possibility. You never know what's going to happen. Johnson Charles is automatically in the team. So yeah, while I don't see him starting, there is a bone in my body which sees him kind of cementing his place mid-tournament within Multan Sultans.
Fantastic. We've got 2 more teams to look at. So moving swiftly on. Is it Quetta, or did you say it's Quetta?
It's Quetta.
Quetta, that's right. So Quetta Gladiators. And apologies once again.
Actually use the U next to a Q in Pakistan, because generally, like, my name Qazi is pronounced with a K. Kalandars is also kind of pronounced with a K, but Quetta is like Q.
So Quetta Gladiators have Shafain Rutherford and Akil Hussain. Now, again, looking at their overseas picks, I think they've got a lot of good overseas players there. Jason Roy, Will Smead, Laurie Evans, Riley Russo, Hasaranga, and then you've got the 2 West Indians, Rutherford and Hussain. Now, I look at the other overseas players and I see, without even factoring in the domestic players, I see someone like Riley Russo definitely playing. I see Hasaranga definitely playing. And then I look at the rest and go, well, I don't know if both of the West Indians get in or not. Now, 2 questions I've got about this, and again, put in the West Indian context. Rutherford has recently returned to West Indies cricket. First debuted as an 18, 19-year-old. He's back now at the age of 24, 25. He has replaced Shimron Hetmeyer and has done well, to be fair, across both the England series and the Australia series. He looks like he may well be a lock, balance of the West Indies team notwithstanding. So the first question will be, do you see Rutherford as a lock in the Quetta side? And then the second question, Akil Hussain is definitely a lock in the West Indies T20 side, but how does PSL treat overseas spinners? And I ask that in the context of IPL, where certain overseas spinners, you're just not really getting a look in. Is it the same across PSL, or do you feel Akil Hussain is good enough to leapfrog over any domestic spinner? And obviously Hasaranga is a lock in that team, but does Akil Hussain get in or not?
It's interesting because Riley Rousseau is the new captain of the Quetta Gladiators. So we know that he's playing every game. Even if he wasn't captain, we knew he was going to play every game. He's been one of the bona fide PSL legends, right? He's played most seasons. He's performed most seasons. He's won a title, I believe, with both Quetta and Multan. So he's a 2-time winner as well. And he's returned to Quetta Gladiators, and he is going to be their captain. So this is one of the major foreign picks within all of the PSL, right? Forget Quetta Gladiators. And Riley, we know, is someone who bats first drop. So I look at Jason Roy in this team and I'm like, okay, he's definitely playing, right? There's no world in which Jason Roy doesn't start. And then it's interesting. You've got Will Smead, who I do highly rate, and I feel like he could get into that team. But when I look at the overall team, I feel like if Hasaranga is available, you have to play him. And that means Will Smead loses his place. Why I say that is because I do feel that Sherfin Rutherford plays every game. This is not some random West Indian pick over here. This is also someone who's a seasoned PSL professional, and the Peshawar Zalmi had him season after season after season. He's had some fantastic performances as well, like those impact innings at the death. That's what he's known for, and he's doing that for the West Indies right now. Peshawar Zalmi, Darren Salmi they have him at the helm. Of course, he's also looking at all of these things, right? Oh, sorry, Quetta Gladiators. This is not Darren Sammy. Shane Watson, though. I'm sure Shane Watson is keeping a keen eye on all of these things. And since Sherfin has done so well for the West Indies as well, I see that, or I can totally see Quetta playing him every game. He seems like that mold of a batter that they'll really need towards the end of an innings. So, yeah, I don't think he has to worry about his place at all. Akil might come into the picture once Hasaranga goes. I know Hasaranga's availability is also a bit of an issue. So when
Mhm.
Hasaranga is around, I don't see Akil starting. When he's not, it's either him or Will Smeed. That would depend on Queta's strengths in both batting and bowling. I do feel like Will Smeed has a better shot at starting ahead of Akil Hussain just because they've got Abrar Ahmed, the Quetta Gladiators, and he's an up
Mhm.
and coming Pakistani spinner who is basically a wrist spinner, but not really. He's a leg spinner with his fingers. It's hard to describe. Like he uses his fingers a lot, and that's where his variations come from. So I feel like if Abrar is fit, because he also had some fitness issues, then there is no room for Akil Hussain. If Abrar is not fit, they also have, I believe, they have Sufyan Mukim, and they have some options. But Sherfane will definitely start in this team. I don't see how they would not start him because he's got PSL performances. He's got performances for the West Indies in recent times as well. Akil, as brilliant as he is, because I think he's a three-dimensional player, right? He offers something with bat, ball, and in the field. And he's a really, really valuable T20 asset to have. Has played for the Multan Sultans earlier as well. I don't see him as an automatic pick. I see him as a great bench option, though, and could be exercised very easily as the tournament goes on. I don't see him starting, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think you've just kind of answered it with that last sentence you said there.
Mm.
So do you think that Quetta essentially have picked up Akil more so from a, as the tournament goes on, we may need to just, swap some players out because of however the tournament's going? Or do you think it's more because they're not sure about availability and they wanted somebody who could not be like for like, but at least be of good enough overseas quality in case there's availability issues? Is that what you think it boils down to?
I think they're looking at him as this guy who kind of fits in ahead of Hasaranga once Hasaranga is unavailable. Because remember last season, Hasaranga just ditched the Gladiators in entirety because, well, it's probably not his fault, but the SLC just basically said that no, he won't go, and he was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be their platinum pick. Of course, he's Hasaranga, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he's around and available, of course he plays. But if Hasaranga isn't available and Abrar isn't fit, then you need a spinner, and Akil is that guy. I just feel like Will Smeed will get a good go this time. I have this feeling that Quetta might invest in him. But hey, I might be wrong, and that person could be Akil, and they go with Jason Roy, Riley Russo, obviously, Akil Hussain, and Vanindu Hasaranga. That's also a possibility if Abrar is injured. But then if they're going to Rawalpindi, they would maybe be a bit hesitant to play multiple spinners. Let's see how things go. Sherfane plays, though. He definitely plays. That's why I think Akil won't, because I do not see Quetta not picking him in this starting 11. Sherfane has the track record in the PSL and the firepower, and he's done well for the West Indies. Everything is going for him. He's one of the important players for them, I feel.
Fantastic. So we're going to end the show with the West Indies actual team, which is Peshawar Zalmi, who, of course, have the West Indies white ball head coach as the coach.
Yeah.
And then have the West Indies captain, T20 captain, Rodman Powell. And, of course, they have the new West Indies bowling sensation, Shamar Joseph, who I think has replaced Gus Atkinson. I think that's who he replaced in the team. Now, I only have two questions here, Behram. Rodman, we don't need to discuss. Rodman is going to start. That's just a given, right?
Yeah.
And deservedly so. So there's no real discussion around that. The two points I have is this. Firstly, Darren Sammy's role. I know he's essentially. It's almost like he's a diplomat in Pakistan in terms of the role he has, and probably. Do you know what, Behram? Probably rightly so, given how much he went over there at the beginning and played such a crucial international role in accepting Pakistani cricket and kind of being the figurehead to say no, let's go over to Pakistan, etc. Right? But at one point, Peshawar, he was coach, then not coach, then he's back as coach. So I don't quite understand all that, because I thought he had been moved away from being the coach for a while, and had almost like a global ambassador type role with Peshawar. But his coach, if I've got that wrong, please correct me. But his coach anyways now. And then Shamar Joseph, just what do you make of that pick? We as West Indians are super excited. No one really knows how he's going to go.
Hmm.
Because the reality is there is no background of significant T20 cricket that says, you know what, just because this guy is good in tests, he's going to be good in T20 cricket. That can go in two different directions, right? But he's added. I don't know how it's been received in Pakistan, but I would be surprised if that his pick hasn't added a level of excitement and mystery just because how many people go and do what he did in the Gabba in the context of that victory. Because Sammy is the coach, I expect him to just play. But is it as simple as that?
Well, I'll start off by Darren Sammy because you mentioned how he's been a diplomat of sorts. I think it's bigger than that, right? Pakistan supporters and everyone who is invested in cricket here, which is like probably 75% of the population, because it is huge, it is a one sport nation, it means a lot. Cricket is part of the national fabric, it's part of Pakistan's identity. Maybe other countries don't, like subcontinent countries will understand what I'm saying, but the West Indies public needs to understand that a whole lot of shits are given about cricket in this part of the world, right? It really, really matters. And for Pakistan to lose international cricket, that was a big blow and something that, kids who are a bit younger than me never knew what the feeling was like to watch cricket at home. Darren Sammy helped fix that. He bridged that gap. And not only was he that spokesperson, he was the one who completely sank himself, immersed himself in all things Pakistan and kind of told the world that, look, you got to come here. It's absolutely necessary. And he came again and again and again. And he integrated so well. He had so much love to give. He got so much love. It is one of the great stories of the PSL. And if I somehow get to interview him this time around, I'm going to bring all of that wholesome stuff up, right? But as coach, you're right. There was a bit of a interesting middle period over there where you're like, okay, have they sacked him? Because it's tough for them to sack him. He's like their brand ambassador. Peshawar Zalmi is Darren Sammy. He's the one who put them like on the forefront. He was the face of the franchise because Shahid Afridi left. So it was Sammy that kind of carried it on. He won the PSL also, let's not forget. And now, given that he's the West Indies coach, I feel like they also felt that it only makes sense for him for them to have him over here. And he knows everyone. So there's no integration challenges. Like he'll already have those relationships and that communication. And I think this is actually a team where even if Sammy wasn't around, I expect both of those West Indian players to feature. Because as you said, Rovman is playing, right? It's quite obvious that he will be starting, as will Tom Kohler-Cadmore. This is someone that Peshawar have invested in a lot for a fair few seasons. So those two guys definitely play. Now here's a team that had Noor Ahmed and he pulled out. Noor Ahmed was their platinum pick, right? They wanted him to play every single game. He's gone. That's an issue for Peshawar Zalmi. And if you look at their bowling, Lungingidi also pulled out. So that's why they had to bring in these reinforcements, but they brought in three. Okay. So I expect both of those guys to start, Rovman and Tom Kohler-Cadmore. And then in the bowling, I expect two to start as well. Luke Wood will play, I'm pretty sure, because left armor done really well across leagues. There's data over there. That's why that pick makes sense. And he would be my choice as well, ahead of Shamar and Gus Atkinson as things go. Now, I feel that just because Shamar Joseph has played two professional T20 games, and he's a vibes pick, right? Let's be real. They picked him up because he lit the world on fire in Test cricket, and you could see like the pace element, right? We can see that he's quick and he's 24, and you can see that he has a lot of heart and can survive with the bat. But does he have the variations to survive in the format? Right? We don't know that. I'm not sure if they're looking at those things or not, but this is Darren Sammy, who's played a lot of T20 cricket, who understands the format well, and also Mohammad Akram, who was a bowler himself, and Peshawar needed reinforcements in the bowling. What Peshawar Zalmi's Achilles heel was that they would score 200 and people would chase it, right? That's how they would lose games. They want to end that, I believe, or they should be looking at things that way. So I see Luke Wood starting with TKC and Rovman Powell. That leaves us with one spot. I do feel like Gus Atkinson will get the nod when he's available ahead of Shamar Joseph. That would be the sensible thing to do because you don't want to just take a punt from the word go or off the bat. But who's to say how well he does, right? Like we don't know. Maybe he'll become a prodigy. And Gus Atkinson, we know for a fact, is not available for the entirety of this PSL. So we can definitely expect to see Shamar Joseph play. We'll get the answer of how good he could be in T20 cricket. and he's got an IPL deal to look forward as well. But starting in an IPL team is probably harder. It's easier to start in a PSL team, especially when Darren Sammy is your coach, who's probably keeping an eye on you because you've literally, it's a diamond that has been unearthed in Shamar Joseph. I'm chuffed for the guy, right? It's a story that we followed very closely from the wood logging in Baracara to New Amsterdam to being the neighbor of what's his face, Romario Shepherd, getting that opportunity to play cricket after being a security guard, being mentored by Curtly Ambrose, and then eventually making it to the Test team, and then Steve Smith first ball wicket. That's a story on its own. And then he goes on to perform like that at the Gabba, right? 7 for in the second innings. You
Right, so
write.
So you've just told the story, which means the next part of the story is top wicket taker in PSL. The story can't end.
That's what I'm saying. The trajectory of the arc is so northwards that you just expect it to not fall ever. But what I'm really excited about Shamar for is that if you read the Bharat piece, he mentioned how he was really enjoying being in Australia because he had only been in South Africa prior, and he had only been introduced to the internet really late in life. So he was talking about how when he got a phone, he was so mesmerized that, oh, these are all the things that I could do. Now, he's seen Australia, South Africa, and the West Indies, to 3 very different places. The West Indies is home, obviously, and he hails from Guyana. So that's like different West Indies, not your regular Jamaica, Barbados. It's a different flavor. Okay. Then he went to South Africa, which one could say that has a lot of baggage for a person of color to visit, right? And then Australia, where he was celebrated. He was the story, and he got a taste of what the even though Australia is in the east, but the Western world looks like, right? Or a first world country in its pomp. That's what it looks like. He'll get to come to the subcontinent now. Completely different flavor, completely different kind of people, and I'm really happy that he's going to get this personal development just being here. Forget playing. He's going to learn so many things in Pakistan, and it's a good dressing room to be a part of the Peshawar Zalmi, and he'll probably pick Darren Sammy's brain a lot because this is some guy who achieved a lot for the West Indies, right? 2 World T20 titles. So Peshawar Zalmi is where I feel like all of the West Indian support should go, because I can see both of those players be really vital cogs in this PSL. If Shamar, if given an opportunity, he does well, he slots it, because they would prefer playing him over Gus if he does well, because Gus is not entirely available. And Rovman's obviously playing, right? He's been playing for the Peshawar Zalmi team for a while now. So yeah, this is the team to look out for. I'd be excited.
Which I guess leaves us, so particularly for those who are massive PSL fans, Behram, I'm going to ask you to put your neck out there now. Last year's winners were Lahore, who beat Multan in the final. Now, as you pointed out, Riley Russo has left Multan. I don't know if that affects your thinking or anything like that. So we've got Shea Hope, who plays for Lahore. You reckon he's going to definitely play for Lahore. Johnson may or may not play for Multan. But do you see, one, either of those two teams returning to the final? And two, who do you see winning it this year?
I see at least one of those teams returning to the final. I have my reservations because Multan has rejigged entirely, right? And team building sometimes takes time. Let's be honest. And they had a great thing going on for a few seasons, and they would kind of switch players around, but the core was the same, and they still have Rizwan. So you can see Multan doing well, but also we don't know that with surety, because it's a new management and there are a bunch of key players gone with new players coming in. But with Multan, one thing you can always trust is that there will be some sort of method behind the madness. It's a team that really thinks things through, and data is a big thing within Multan Sultans. Nathan Lehman is part of the management, right? So, I mean, you can expect them to be smart about their cricket, and that's why you can never write them off, regardless of who's playing for them. So it's either going to be them or Lahore in the final for me. And Lahore, just because, they have been the best PSL team for 2 years in a row. And even though Rashid is unavailable, maybe they can cope without him. The only reason why I don't say that Lahore are the clear favorites to win this is because Rashid isn't available. If he was available, then hands down, Lahore was once again in the reckoning to lift a third PSL title on the bounce. I see Islamabad winning this. And that's not because I'm from Islamabad. I don't have any biases over here. Not at all. In fact, I don't think that they had a top drawer team in the past. A lot of people are saying they always look good on paper. But when I say they look good on paper, let me tell you the players that they have, right? Franchise teams always do well when they have a good local core. Look at the local core: Shadab Khan, Naseem Shah, Imad Wasim, Azam Khan, Fahim Ashraf, and Qasim Akram is there as well, who is a really good young all rounder. Then you've got the new Shahs, under 19 star Ubaid Shah, who is Naseem's younger brother. And they also have a middle brother who's supposed to be really good as well, Hunain Shah. So they've banked hard on the Shahs. And the other emerging pick is Shamil Hussain, who is a really talented opening batter who gives it a whack, right? And that's Islamabad's kind of mantra, that you have to go out there and bang, 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 just hit. They are the England of the PSL, basically. And that's how they've played their cricket. So, because I think that is a good way to go about things, and you've got Monroe and Hales and Jordan Cox and Timal Mills and all of these guys as well for supporting roles, and potentially Obed or Matthew Ford, one of those guys. There's a lot of quality in this team. There are a lot of all rounders in this team. It seems like a team that is reliable, and everyone will play freely because you bat deep. So, based on what I see on paper, I feel like they are the favorites over here. Whether or not they're able to translate it, I'm not sure. But you'd still expect this team to make the final at this point because they've bottled it season after season. They're always decent. This time, I feel like they have too much star power that it would be extremely disappointing for them not to make the final. And yeah, it's them versus one of those other two teams that you talked about. That would be my educated guess on who would be playing the final.
Well, ladies and gents, provided you stuck with me and Behram through this episode, and to be fair, Behram, I thought that's quality. I thought it's an absolutely quality episode. For those of you who are new, who've not come across Behram's work before, which I find hard to believe, but if you haven't, now you see why I got Behram on the show and why I insisted on him being the person to come talk PSL with me. You can find Behram on Twitter or X. You can see, if you're watching, you can see his @ on the screen right in front of you, @ Def Mango. Obviously, when I post this, you'll see I would have linked to Behram anyways. And then once you go on that Twitter handle, you should have the link to everywhere you can find Behram stuff. Please go and follow him, people. I don't often say that on shows about people, but if I believe someone's really good, you need to go back them and you need to get behind the content that they're doing. Behram, absolutely fantastic, man. It begs the question why we've never done this with PSL before. But listen, if I was someone who wasn't a previous PSL watcher, you've been so good that now I have to go watch PSL. so you just sold PSL for anybody who wasn't previously a PSL viewer. It all kicks off tomorrow, irrespective of when people are watching this. The first game is on the 17th of February, people. So do lock in and lock in. You'll be covering the tournament, I would assume, Behram.
Yeah, so I'm here in Lahore right now, going to be going to the games in Lahore, and then I'll be going to the games in Rawalpindi. So that's the extent of my coverage of PSL, because the Karachi leg I'm not doing, and I'm not going to Multan. So I'm kind of covering half of it, but then I have multiple jobs, as you would have known from Mashel's kind words, and that's really generous of you. And it's my pleasure to be here. And I've been following your work and Santoki's work for a long time. So this is one of those podcasts that this is a big moment for me too, that I'm on CCP. But yeah, go to the link tree. You'll see all of the different links over there where I carry out like my coverage and write and record and all of that stuff. So I'll be covering for multiple people throughout. It's going to be hectic, but I'm excited because, you know, it is a T20 World Cup year, as you said. And Pakistan is in a weird position where you seem to have the talent, but the team is going nowhere, which is sad, but also something that you can fix, right? It doesn't seem like something that is beyond the realms of repairing. So it's going to be an interesting PSL. I think everyone in the Caribbean should watch it because, yeah, if you want good, heartwarming, wholesome feels content, the PSL has always been that. That's their brand. It's one big, giant hug.
100%. Listen, Behram, if you get any one-to-ones with any of the West Indian players, just give me a shout and I'll direct our audience to go watch that stuff. Because one thing I'm certain of is if you get them on a one-to-one, that'll be content worth watching. So people, like I say, go follow Behram. He's in Pakistan right now covering PSL. I've been Machel St. Patrick Hewitt. one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you, Behram, again. For those of you who want to know where to follow Behram, it's all in the description below. So don't say, Mash, how do we find him? I'll put all of the descriptors below so that you can go and follow everything that's going on. Behram, thank you once more. Ladies and gents, stay locked in for more CCC content. You know how we do.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.